Let's talk about Will Levis and the Tennessee Titans, because I believe the Tennessee Titans have had a very good offseason. They've been very busy, and they've addressed all their needs in free agency and through the NFL draft. When you look at Will Levis, he did not start the entire season. For the first couple of games of the year, Ryan Tannehill was a starting quarterback, and he was terrible. He looked completely washed, but they gave him chance after chance to go out there and redeem himself until he was knocked out of the game with an ankle injury. Then they put in Malik Willis in the fourth quarter. Malik Willis looked terrible. Malik Willis is not a true NFL starting quarterback, and I do not believe that he ever will be. Rocket arm, very good athleticism. He just doesn't get rid of the football enough. He can't quickly scan the field. But you have a guy in Will Levis that you drafted in the second round. The expectation was for him to go out there, learn from underneath Ryan Tannehill, and hopefully he'll be in a better situation moving forward in his second and third year. But you had to put him out there against the Atlanta Falcons on a short week's notice. 4 passing touchdowns to 0 interceptions. He looked phenomenal in that game against the Atlanta Falcons. And it wasn't like he wasn't dealing with pressure throughout the entire game, because he was. On almost every drop back, he was dealing with pressure in his face. And that would be the telltale sign of the Tennessee Titans offensive line. One of the worst offensive line units in the NFL. And Derrick Henry was still holding things down. A solid running back with the Tennessee Titans, who is no longer with this team. But let's get into what they've done in free agency and through the NFL draft. Their first order of business was to go out there and fix the offensive line to give Will Levis a true fighting chance. It's crazy to say that Will Levis had 8 passing touchdowns to 4 interceptions in the games that he did play in. And I believe that the best game that he played in was against the Miami Dolphins. They won that game 28-27. He was 23 of 38 on the day, 1 passing touchdown to 1 interception for 327 passing yards. Why would I say that's his best game? It's because he dealt with so many pressures in that game, and he was dealing with so much adversity, and the only consistent option that was getting open was DeAndre Hopkins. But they went out there and they addressed some needs on the offensive line. First, they signed Lord Cushenberry, center from the Denver Broncos. You can make the argument that he was the best center this season in the NFL, and that's not an over-exaggeration, because you look at his numbers. 1,070 snaps played this season, 1 sack allowed, and he's a great run blocker as well. Now, they're bringing over a brand new head coach. Mike Vrabel is no longer the head coach with the Tennessee Titans. Now you have Brian Callahan, who's a former offensive coordinator with the Cincinnati Bengals. And he can call up some plays. He got hired because of the work that he did with Jake Browning and Joe Burrow. But bringing in a guy like Lord Cushenberry, you can run the football behind him with Tony Pollard and with Tajay Spears. And speaking of Tony Pollard, that was another free agency acquisition. Now, Tony Pollard is not a true every down running back. He's very good when you use him in that dual back setting. Lucky for the Tennessee Titans, they have Tajay Spears, who's a very good running back with the squad. But when you look at Tony Pollard, 1,005 rushing yards on the season, 6 rushing touchdowns, he's just not going to be that bell cow running back with the Tennessee Titans. And the thing is with Tajay Spears, he could come in 453 rushing yards on the season, 2 rushing touchdowns, 4.5 yards a carry. They're going to play very well off each other, especially in this system with Brian Callahan. And you have Hassan Haskins, who could be the sledgehammer running back that can get you the 1 to 2 yards, and when it's 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2, we will see. Or you can use Julius Chestnut in that situation, who is 5'11", 228 pounds. So we'll see. They have some physical running backs with the team. I like the running backs in that room. It's a very solid running back core. It's not terrible, but it's not going to be a top 5 running back room, but you can get very good production out of these guys that you have. Now, the wide receivers were also a huge question mark, and they were a huge issue. They went out there and they addressed that need as well. They went and signed Calvin Ridley. This is a major move. Did they overpay for Calvin Ridley? Yes. But at the same time, they needed a guy like Calvin Ridley. DeAndre Hopkins, you got him in last year's free agency class. You were hoping that the Tennessee Titans would be a playoff contending team. But dealing with all the injuries, unfortunately, they were not. But DeAndre Hopkins showed that he is still a very good wide receiver. Don't let that age fool you. DeAndre Hopkins was getting busy with Ryan Tannehill and with Will Levis. His numbers increased with Will Levis. 75 catches on the season, 1,057 receiving yards, and 7 receiving touchdowns, and he averaged 14 yards a catch. Calvin Ridley is a smooth route runner. He's going to benefit a lot from playing alongside DeAndre Hopkins, and you took him away from the Jacksonville Jaguars. 76 catches on the season for 1,016 receiving yards and 8 receiving touchdowns, and he averaged 13.5 yards a catch. That's going to be very good for this young quarterback. And Calvin Ridley's not your typical 30-year-old wide receiver. I see a lot of people making jokes about Calvin Ridley. Look, Calvin Ridley was drafted when he was 24 years old, and he missed an entire season with the Atlanta Falcons because he was dealing with a gambling issue. So he doesn't have the same mileage on his body like other 30-year-old wide receivers. So knock it off with the jokes about saying, hey, they paid him, but they didn't pay A.J. Brown. Two different things. Calvin Ridley does not have the mileage on his body, and also this as well. It's a different general manager. Now you have Rand, who's running the show. The other general manager is the guy that went out there and basically traded A.J. Brown away and was hoping that Treylon Burks would develop into becoming the number one wide receiver. And speaking of Treylon Burks, I like him a lot. I love the potential. But eventually, potential, you're going to have to go out there and live up to that potential, or they're going to move on from you. Treylon Burks' rookie season dealt with a turf toe injury. Wasn't able to do much on the field. But they rushed him to being that number one wide receiver. He wasn't ready. They had him and DeAndre Hopkins. Let me not disrespect DeAndre Hopkins. They had DeAndre Hopkins. He was a number one. They were just hoping for more production from Treylon Burks. They didn't get it. In year number 2, he had some solid moments, but his rookie season was better, and he suffered a nasty concussion against the Steelers. Another great performance by Will Levis in that game. They need to see some consistency from him because you have Nick Westbrook-Ikine, who right now is a better wide receiver than Treylon Burks. And they just drafted a wide receiver that I will talk about in a couple of minutes as well. Treylon Burks right now does look like a bust, and that sucks because he was such a beast at Arkansas, and I really hope that he can turn things around. I know that he's dealt with some issues with those injuries, but man, you have to step up on the field and take advantage when Will Levis is giving you the football. They have Chika Kongwu at the tight end spot. I really love him. You guys, if you've listened to the channel for quite some time, I think he could be a top receiving tight end in the NFL. 54 catches for 528 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. The reason why I love him so much, I go back to that game that he had a year ago with the Kansas City Chiefs to basically where the Tennessee Titans, if Malik Willis would just complete 4 passes more in that game, they would have beat the Kansas City Chiefs. He was phenomenal in that game for that one play. He's an explosive tight end. If they could find out how to use him more in the receiving game, you have a true star here. But I want to go back to the offensive line because like I mentioned, you signed Lloyd Cushenberry with those other free agents and Tony Pollard and also Calvin Ridley. But you also brought in another tackle in the first round and JC Latham. Now the Tennessee Titans, they did want Joe Alt. All the reports are saying they want Joe Alt. That was their guy. The Los Angeles Chargers took Joe Alt. Joe Alt is a phenomenal tackle, but JC Latham was my number 2 tackle. 0 sacks allowed this season for Alabama, and he is a mountain of a man. 6'6", 342 pounds. He's a phenomenal pass blocker. He is a bit raw in the run game, but it's not terrible. On the back half of that season in college, the run blocking did look better. I think that he's going to be a franchise tackle with the Tennessee Titans. And you pair him up with Peter Skoronski, who you drafted in the first round in last year's draft class, and he was the best offensive lineman this season with the Titans. All of a sudden, you have Peter Skoronski, JC Latham, if he could live up to his potential, and Lloyd Cushenberry at the center spot. Those could be 3 very good offensive linemen with the Titans. And you also have Jalen Duncan, that's a developmental tackle, and he gave you some solid snaps. Wasn't the greatest, but it was solid at times. I think that he could be a very good backup tackle or a very good swing tackle. We'll see if he can develop. But the offensive line already looks better. And you have an offensive head coach for the first time in a very long time. The thing is with Mike Vrabel, loved him as a head coach early on. But it was time to blow that thing up when they lost against the Cincinnati Bengals, when they had a washed up Julio Jones. No disrespect to him, because when he was with the Atlanta Falcons, he was a beast. But when they traded for him, he was completely done. They had A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, and they went against the Cincinnati Bengals and they laid an egg. That was the time to go out there and make that realistic Super Bowl push. And after that, nothing was the same. Yes, they traded A.J. Brown, but even before that, the offense was terrible. Todd Downing was a terrible offensive coordinator, and Mike Vrabel could not figure out how to use the offense in the right way. Hopefully, bringing in Brian Callahan as a brand new head coach, as an offensive-minded guy, and him bringing over his dad and Bill Callahan, who's one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL, they can come out here and run some better plays, and they can protect Will Levis better. I think the offensive line is going to be better regardless, with them adding in Lloyd Cushenberry before they even drafted JC Latham. I don't think a lot of people realize how great of an offensive line coach Bill Callahan is. Everywhere that he has been, the offensive line has significantly improved, and I'm expecting for the Tennessee Titans offensive line to do the same. Now, they didn't only just go out there and make moves on the offensive end. They also went out there and made some defensive moves as well. They traded the 3rd-round pick in this year's draft class to go get L'Jarius Sneed. He is a very good cornerback. You can make the argument that he is a true number 1 corner. Now, Trent McDuffie was the better corner for the Kansas City Chiefs, but when you look at L'Jarius Sneed's numbers, 470 yards allowed with 48 catches, 4 pass breakups, 0 touchdowns allowed to 2 interceptions. A beautiful press man corner that's going to go out there and be very aggressive at the line of scrimmage. And they had to make a move in the secondary because they had one of the worst secondaries in the NFL last season. There were 26 in passing defense. That's not good enough for the Tennessee Titans, especially being in this division with C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, if he can develop and stay fully healthy, and also with Trevor Lawrence. So to go out there and get a veteran corner, I like that move. They also have Roger McCreary as well, who was the best cornerback with the team last season. I like his game. Then you have Chidobe Awuzie. That's the wild card. Come and go from the Cincinnati Bengals. Not a true number 1, but if he's a number 2 or number 3 corner with this team right here, he's going to be very effective. Look at what he was able to do with the Dallas Cowboys. He was solid. Look what he was able to do with the Bengals. Solid corner. And he has a connection with Coach Callahan as well. I like them picking him up in free agency. So already the defense does look better. Then you had a guy that's a very good pass rusher in Harold Landry come back this season. You were worried about him when he missed all of the season before, dealing with that ACL injury that he suffered in training camp. He didn't miss a beat. 10.5 sacks. Very good pass rusher. And I think that he's going to be a key pass rusher moving forward with the Tennessee Titans. You also have Jeffrey Simmons, who did miss a couple of games on the back half of the season, but he's a consistent edge rusher as well and a consistent defensive tackle. It just depends on when they move him around. He's primarily a defensive tackle, but he does play some edge rusher. 5.5 sacks on the season, 1 forced fumble. And this is something very interesting that the Tennessee Titans did in the 2nd round. They drafted T'Vondre Sweat, defensive tackle out of Texas. I like the move. It's just an awkward pairing with him and Jeffrey Simmons. It's going to be hard as hell to run the football on the Tennessee Titans. In 13 games, 2 sacks, 23 quarterback hurries, 28 total pressures on the season, and he was rated as one of the best defensive tackles in college and definitely in the NFL draft. I like the move. It's just a bit awkward to have him and Jeffrey Simmons because they're going to take up a lot of space in that interior, which I will say this right here. If you're going against a guy like C.J. Stroud, you're going against the Indianapolis Colts, why not have a big front? I like the move. It's just very interesting that they went with a defensive tackle in the 2nd round. A lot of people say they could have traded back and they could have got T'Vondre Sweat. That's easy to say that in hindsight because the same people that are saying that would be the same people that would be pissed off if they traded back and they did not select this kid. So they stuck to their guns and they stuck with him. Like I mentioned before, they did not have a 3rd-round pick because they traded that for L'Jarius Sneed. It's not a bad 3rd-round pick to have, in my opinion. In the 4th round, they selected Cedric Gray, linebacker from North Carolina. 6'2", 80 tackles on the season, 3 pass breakups, 5 sacks. He's 234 pounds. 9 quarterback hurries, 7 quarterback hits, a solid linebacker to have. And he could be a starter right now. He's one of those guys that you look at. He's played a lot of college ball. You have Kenneth Murray at your linebacking spot. Kenneth Murray isn't terrible, but he hasn't lived up to that hype when he first came out of college. 79 solo tackles, 3 sacks. I think he can be okay as just a bridge option, but you hope that Cedric Gray could come in immediately and give you production, and I think that he will. You also have Jack Gibbons as well, 55 solo tackles, 1 sack. He's only 25 years old. That's why I'm making the case right now that Cedric Gray could really just come in and take one of those spots, and he could be a very good corner, be a very good linebacker, with the Tennessee Titans straight out the gate. With their 5th round pick, they selected Jarvis Brownlee, cornerback from Louisville. He's 5'10". He's 194 pounds, so you would think he's a slot corner. It's not the case. His arms are long as hell. He's actually a press man corner. He can sit back and develop behind L'Jarius Sneed, or he can sit back and develop behind Chidobe Awuzie. I expect for him to come in and get some snaps, but it's me one of those guys. This is just huge potential. He needs to gain some weight. He's very fast as well. He will give us some big plays, but with that length that he has, he could be a very good cornerback with the Tennessee Titans in the next couple of years. So I like the pick and I like the potential. He's definitely not ready to play now in the NFL because some of these receivers will give him a lot of problems. But you let him develop majority of the year or just for the entire season, I think he could be solid moving forward. Then in the 6th round, they drafted Jaquan Jackson, wide receiver from Tulane. This is what I was talking about with Treylon Burks. They're bringing in a lot of wide receivers right now. Calvin Ridley is better. DeAndre Hopkins is better. Nick Westbrook-Ikine is better. If this kid could come in and he could be in the slot and he can dominate, and he's 5'9" and 188 pounds, he's explosive and very speedy, and he could just be a major deep threat, which, by the way, if he can find his way on the field, and I really hope that he can with DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley, he's going to open up things for those guys underneath. And Chig Okongwu as well. The one thing about him, he's just very light, and if you do press up on him a lot, he may be not able to go out there and get deep down the field, similar to a guy like Scotty Miller. But one thing that we know about wide receivers like this, you put them in the slot, it's kind of hard to play roll coverage on them. So they just get a free rush up the seams. If you're running a play action play, it's going to open up everything else for everyone underneath. So in the 1 year and 1 off season, they've basically went out there and just redid the whole model with the Tennessee Titans. They went from having a smash mouth team that's just been known to go out there to stop the run the football, and be nasty and be aggressive. And out of nowhere, you have a quarterback that has true ability, that can stand tall in the pocket, that can run around, has sneaky athleticism, and has great accuracy when you give him enough time in the pocket. I thought that Will Levis should have been a 1st-round pick, but that's just me. I had him rated high with guys like Anthony Richardson and C.J. Stroud. Now, C.J.'s on a different level, but I do believe that Will Levis can be a franchise quarterback if the Tennessee Titans take care of him. I believe that he can be one of the better quarterbacks that they have had in a very long time, even better than Ryan Tannehill if they take care of him. This offensive line can play up a standard. I like the head coach and Callahan. He is young. This is his first time ever being a head coach, so that does bother me. It's going to be a learning curve. I can see the Tennessee Titans being a sneaky team in this division, but at the same time, I can see them being the 3rd or even the worst team in the division as well because of the new pieces and this team being so young. But you have those veterans on the defensive end like Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry that have been to the playoffs numerous times. You have a veteran, DeAndre Hopkins, and a veteran in Calvin Ridley. And Tony Pollard, at this stage of his career, he's been to the playoffs numerous times, and he's a veteran as well. But you have those young players like Chig Okongwu, Will Levis, and that young offensive line. The offensive line is going to be the biggest key, because if the offensive line can perform to be a top 5, the top 10 offensive line, there's no reason why Will Levis can't be the guy. And it also depends on that as well. If Will Levis is not their guy, they can move off of him in a year and draft a quarterback in next year's draft class. If you don't have a top pick within the top 5, the top 10 range, that means that Will Levis had to go out there and perform up the standard. It comes down to Will Levis, though. They're building this team up, and I think that he'll have a solid season with the Tennessee Titans. But let me know in the comment section below how you guys feel about the Tennessee Titans offseason, the free agency part, and the draft. And do you believe that the Tennessee Titans can contend in this division? The only thing is this division is so unpredictable. Just a couple years ago, the Tennessee Titans were the kings of this division. In like an instant, it was the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now it's the Houston Texans. It seems like it's a round table. And one thing to take note of as well, all the quarterbacks in this division have major potential. With Trevor Lawrence, I'm still holding out hope for that. C.J. Stroud, like a beast his rookie season. We'll see if he can carry that over in sophomore season. Anthony Richardson is a huge wild card. And you also have Will Levis as well. But just let me know in the comment section below, how do you guys feel about the Tennessee Titans? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, want each and every last one, guys, stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for watching the video, guys. God bless. Peace.